Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this College of Arts live discussion panel based around the question, can the arts save the world? We have representatives from across our schools within the college, and I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves before we get into our first question. So, Alex, please, could you let us know who you are?
Okay, thanks, Stuart. I'm Alex Lefchuk. I'm the Programme Leader for Communications and Public Relations here at the University of Lincoln, also the co-founder of Siren Radio and Senior Lecturer in the School of English and Journalism.
Thank you very much. Rachel, yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel Bainton. I'm Creative Engagement Producer and Lecturer in the School of Fine and Performing Arts. I work across drama, music, musical theatre, fine art, dance and technical theatre and stage management.
Welcome aboard. Thank you. Emilio.
Thank you, Stuart. Hello, I'm Emilio, Senior Lecturer in Product Design, Lincoln School of Design, where I teach in the BA program in Product Design, as well as I do research on the intersections between design, innovation, sustainability, and social inclusion.
Thank you very much. Clive.
Thank you, Stuart. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Clive McCarthy. I'm a Senior Lecturer with Lincoln School of Film and Media. Currently, I deliver on modules on digital media, and I lecture on media studies at level 3. Thank you.
And finally, but not last, Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason Whitaker, and I'm head of the School of English and Journalism at Lincoln. My own background is a scholar of English, but I also worked as a journalist for 15 years. And I teach across the disciplines of English communications, journalism, and creative writing.
What a fantastic panel. My name, everyone, is Stuart Bibby. I am the acting deputy head of the School of Design. And I'm going to be chairing this, and I'm going to start with our first question, ask somebody to pick up whether in the current climate, how are audiences relying on the creative arts in all of its multiple disciplines, and how do you think this emphasizes its importance within that climate?
Aha.
So how do we rely on the creative arts? What are the creative arts, and how is it dealing with what is happening to us all currently?
If I could come in first, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the areas where there's been a massive impact of the current pandemic and consumption of the arts is in terms of simply transforming more of us into readers. So whilst we'll be talking about various areas such as the impact on live events and live performance, the publishing industry, particularly for fiction and that kind of publishing, has seen a massive explosion over the past few months. Very simply, I think this applies to other areas, whether film, television. We've come to the realization that whilst it may be the sciences and medicine in particular, the work towards a new vaccine, which is going to be incredibly important for helping bring us out of this pandemic, to sustain us while we're going through it, the role of the creative arts and the creative industries is absolutely essential. And it's one thing that it's sort of working with students on a regular basis, as well as colleagues, that we're not simply emphasizing to students, for example, in the work that they do at Lincoln. It's also something that they're engaging with on a daily basis. So I'll stick to one small area, although this applies across all the areas within my particular school, and I know also applies to other schools as well. But if you take creative writing, what we're finding there's a massive surge amongst students in looking for outlets to express themselves in terms of getting their work published, dealing with agents, and dealing with publishers who have also realised that, I don't want to sound ghoulish that this is a boon time, but actually a realisation that people are reading more than they did previously. And so it's something that we're seeking in the school and indeed within the university to put ourselves at the forefront.
So you think it's made people become a little bit more retrospective to engage with a certain level of craft. What about others in other areas, design, performing arts, in media? Clive, maybe Rachel?
I can take, yeah, absolutely. I've just been involved in a project to do with musicians in the various guises. They've shut all the venues down. I've got I do have somebody in the family that works in the music industry, and this has been a huge problem. And what we've been looking at is to put the bands, the musicians, the duos onto live streaming sites. Now, these are already a lot of these were already established, but all of a sudden, within 6 months, poof, they've gone absolutely stratospheric. So I'm talking about the likes of StageIt, Twitch TV, whereas it was a gaming site, but now it's got a creative component to Twitch TV. We can also look at Mixer, but I think Mixer's actually just been bought up within this last 6 months. YouNow, which is a teen-orientated platform for a younger demographic. Facebook Live is another one. YouTube Live, LiveMe. All of these are putting live music onto a forum, into a forum that people can access, and also it's monetized so that the actual musicians can still work. One of the best ones of these is Street Jelly. Now then, people were you don't see as many buskers on the street for the very nature of what we're going through. But Street Jelly is a collaboration by buskers across the world, and instead of having just money going in, they have a tipping jar via PayPal. So it's having an impact, a large impact.
Do you think this has encouraged a different approach from designers, let's say, Emilio, in maybe dealing with new ways of communicating, new product development for such things?
Well, I have to say that compared to the other disciplines, this is the first time that design is facing a pandemic. And in my point of view, this aspect has underlined a number of very interesting opportunities across the society. One of the most important things that I would like to pointing out with you is that for the first time, maybe there is a sort of disappearing between a difference of designers and non-designers. For the first time, people have started to adopt creative and design-led processes in reshaping and improving the quality of life of people. Obviously, from the product design point of view, the actual situation that we are experiencing in these months, and probably we will continue to experience just at least for a few times more, will change and positively influence the way companies, designers, students as well, but even citizens will consider the role of living using a sort of creative-oriented or design-driven lifestyle. I see many positive instances that we can take into account for the near future in order to reshape and in some ways improving the quality of life of people in terms of well-being, sustainability, creative ways of living, as well as positive contaminations and holistic approaches between disciplines in order to overcome the traditional boundaries that force people to don't work together and stay confined in closed towers or rooms.
Okay. Thank you. Rachel, were you going to add about the way that audiences in the performing arts rely on the creative people within the creative arts arena?
I think we're all incredibly aware of it at the moment. In the first lockdown and in this second one, we've turned as a nation, as a world, we've turned to our creative industries to keep us entertained, to bring us together, to help us understand more about each other, to work together, to experience each other's cultures. I think arts and creativity are allowing us to travel at a time when we can't physically travel, and we're able to connect with experiences and people all around the world. You saw an absolute proliferation of theatre and film and music and dance and performance and work appearing on screen as soon as lockdown happened. And artists and companies all over the world were really sort of super generous in putting their back catalogue online and allowing us to revisit shows and see things that we might not have had an opportunity to see. It's interesting at the moment in terms of the creative industries and the creative sector. I mean, I teach about creative industries across all our courses. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing obviously a lot of precarity in the creative industries, and we're understanding just how vulnerable perhaps some of our artists and institutions are. But it's also an interesting time for the sector because we're thinking about ways that we can build forward and make stronger and make sure, as Clive was saying, that our artists are paid for their work, that there is a sustainable career, that there is an inclusive and diverse sustainable career for people out there. So while it's a time of kind of uncertainty and everything, actually it's also a time of great opportunity and innovation. And I think across the performing arts, we're seeing sort of both of those things go hand in hand. But yeah, absolutely. Right now, there's never been such an important time for the creative industries and for our arts and our theatre and our performance, because we need to be able to see each other and we need to be able to understand more about each other.
Okay, so COVID-19 obviously has had a massive effect across everything that everyone does. How specifically do you think it has affected the direction of the creative industries? You've kind of alluded to directions, all of you there, and specifically within a university setting, how have your schools and the inherent programs adapted to this? Has it helped you redirect? Has it kind of drawn a line in the sand where you think, yeah, this could actually have some positives, as Rachel just alluded to?
I could probably come in on this one. We like many of my colleagues, yourself, Stuart, and Emilio, Jason, everybody in the panel, we've got projects that are usually European or international in aspect, and we as a team in digital media, were using and utilizing Teams way beyond the March COVID crisis. But I was reading an article that actually Teams, the back end code for it, it's been rewritten about 22 times since they've had to react to whatever's going on. And I started to notice within my LinkedIn profile, because all you guys have got an extensive LinkedIn profile, jobs all of a sudden they went from 40 to way up there. What had happened in March is that big companies and educational institutions were sort of a little bit caught out. So what's happening is they are wanting digitally coherent people, and it's not 40, it's 300. What got my notice was that there was a job for a digital designer within Lego, and I'd sweep up it to get a job at Lego, to be quite honest with you. And so once I started to put these jobs out in the forum for students, I said, your skills are wanted. Also, I've just been mentoring on a project. This tracks back to Rachel. So students are putting together a platform for online theatre, and I said, "Well, what actually got your attention?" And they'd watched Hamilton online, and I said, "Well, pre-COVID, would you have watched that?" No. So I think actually what's happening is that they will never forget that. They're going to build on that. Once you had an experience like that, you enjoyed it, you're going to keep on doing it and build on it.
So essentially, you think there are emerging new directions across creative industries that students, staff, schools are able to tap into. Yeah.
Perfectly put, Stuart, amongst my tangent comeback there. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Clive.
You asked specifically about what we're doing in individual schools, and of
Yes.
course, fine and performing arts, we're about live practice. We're about bodies and spaces, people in rooms, that wonderful experience of having an audience all together. We're about people touching and performing and dancing together and making work. So you can imagine right now that's an incredibly complex set of things to negotiate. And I think across the school, all the different disciplines have kind of been working to think what might work for them and how might they make that happen. Dance in particular, if you follow the ULL Dance Twitter account, you can see some fantastic images and short videos of the ways that they're finding to work together in studio spaces, online, in digital spaces, in live virtual spaces. And that might be sort of white boxes drawn on the studio floor and everyone's keeping those separate distances, and we've got a great cleaning regime in place and lots of PPE for the staff as necessary. But also they're finding ways to kind of work digitally, and you've got these fantastic kind of mass group shots of ensemble performances happening across Zoom rooms across the country. They're working to make short films and videos, and we're also it's interesting to see how we're negotiating sort of recorded materials and live, because as I said, we're about that live experience, and there's something about feeling as an audience member that you've turned up for an event and that you're joining in and you're part of that live experience. So we're absolutely, as reflects the entire sector at the moment, trying to find new ways of really exploring the digital platforms we've got, of making sure that we're still capturing something of that live event. And yeah, live works is kind of still happening. So our school spaces, we've still got rehearsals going on. We're working towards Christmas shows. It's all still happening, just in new ways.
Do you anticipate, before we bring some of the others in, do you anticipate if and when we do have a return to normality, and hopefully sooner rather than later, that those digital platforms will still be employed, will still be used, maybe a mix of live and digital?
This is the conversation at the moment. So I think perhaps I'm kind of speaking for everyone here, maybe slightly out of turn, but I think perhaps there's been some resistance in the past because we're engaged in live practice. There's been perhaps some resistance to moving entirely digital, and having been forced to move entirely digital and quickly upskill and embrace that challenge. And again, there is some excitement in that. We've kind of been seeing that perhaps some of these things do work better online, and some things will obviously need to be in person and in the flesh, and we're really able to kind of now work out what absolutely has to be bodies and spaces and what can be virtual. One thing that's been fantastic personally for me as an industry professional, I'm a touring theatre maker, for me, but also for students that I'm working with who are having the same experience, is how many doors are open right now in terms of strategic and sector and industry kind of meetings, conferences, meetups. I've been finding, and with my students, we've been finding ourselves in rooms with people, digital rooms with people that we perhaps wouldn't have done before because of cost or location or specific access needs. And we're now able to kind of be in quite big conversations and really feel very connected. The sector's much more connected. And again, that's helping to generate new conversations. So I do think that we're going to perhaps see a kind of hybrid route, but I suspect that some things have to stay live.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Alex and Jason, have you seen much adaptation and what is it within the programs across English journalism, maybe?
Well, clearly Jason can talk at length about English creative writing and so on, but I can just actually say a few words about public relations and communications, because that's an area which certainly kind of encompasses both the sciences and the arts. And as a litmus test, I've obviously been speaking regularly to not only our current students and the work that they've been doing with Signet PR, the in-house student-led public relations agency that also enhances its work with clients by actually engaging with a lot more online work, because they've had to, and they've had to shift through that. And a number of the clients have been asking, certainly the students, to actually provide aspects of social media, covering elements relating to that and so on, which is absolutely crucial to that whole side of things. When we consider our postgraduates and our graduates, of course, they've also been actively involved, whether it's been working within the car industry, where live events have still been kind of taking place, or they've been developing things from that basis, or they've been looking at more of the arts, the creative, the film industry, and so on. And they have actually really been embracing the technology is actually there, and it has been there and has been developing. But as Rachel said, we were kind of been bumped into this. It's almost a kind of an evolutionary phase. I'm sure that in terms of the tactile aspects, there are already tactile suits that you can wear if you wish to get that tactile experience, but maybe that's beyond the remit of this discussion. But those sort of elements are critical in terms of the way in which we're using both the sciences, the technology side of things, to the arts, and I think to great benefit. And that's something we try to encourage, certainly within the programs of communications and PR, and indeed journalism within the school. And I think Jason can pick up the creative writing side of things now, as we're living the science fiction dream.
Yeah. or the dystopian existence. I'll actually follow up on the final comments you're making with regard to journalism first. And this actually is to just draw attention to the fact that whilst our students, they've obviously been the past few months of kind of how will a future career going forward, you know, they've worked on a particular assumption that journalism will take place in newsrooms with teams engaged in camera crews, etc. And as somebody who works on a regular basis, for example, with journalists from The Guardian or from Thomson Reuters, and seeing them in situations extremely similar to these, there are no magically protected newsrooms, particularly in London, where there are vast quantities of journalists working together. Everybody's been dispersed outwards. And so actually, I think as much as anything, we're concentrating now on the ability of engaging with things like remote news days, where students will be going out, collecting stories, interviewing safely, conducting interviews via Zoom and other techniques. And they're actually producing their packages in a way that's very similar to what's actually going on in the industry together. There's also, I think, a fundamental element which Alex had touched upon, and which has actually come up with several other commentators this morning, which is actually we're also building in resilience. The fact is that this has suddenly become an industry where there is a great deal of surprise as to what happens next. But also, the truth be told, there's considerable amounts of opportunities. And this is something I say that I mentioned previously with publishing and creative writing, but it also then applies to significant areas of journalism. The demand for news has not gone down, just as the demand for books and creative writing has not gone down. In some respects, whilst our teaching is obviously modified to make sure that we're working on a COVID-safe campus, in some respects, if I concentrate on the ways in which students engage with creative writing, there's always been an element that whilst we bring people together for the workshop, creative writing always has a somewhat solitary edge to it. You know, it is an individual with their keyboard or their notepad and pen. Where we're actually finding that technology is helping us is through using all those various tools for sharing and workshopping online. And actually, a couple of cases, so we're running online reading groups, we're running online workshops, as well as what's taking place in the classroom. And actually, as people have discovered in a whole host of other circumstances, whether it's kind of Zoom meetings with friends and family or Teams meetings with work colleagues, that actually this is becoming a new normal for simply sharing your ideas and your work with your colleagues and your peers.
Thank you. So most degree courses are 3 years in duration. Over the lifetime of a normal degree program, do you see in the future the industry, your industries, changing in that amount of time, and what effects that will have for students, and how your programs keep up with those kind of rapid changes?
I've spoken about this before a little. I think we always feel that we're going through a huge period of change. And I think any student starting any 3-year course will, over the course of that 3-year course, see huge shifts. And it's our responsibility as scholars, as students, as people engaged in our sector to keep up with that change and to embrace it and move forward with it. So right now feels like a really seismic shift and a really seismic change, but actually I would think that over the time that I've been teaching in Lincoln and over all of the different students that I've met and all these different cycles, actually that there's always change, there's always adaptations to be made, there's always innovation, and you're wanting to keep ahead of that curve. And actually it's an exciting thing to do. It's an exciting thing to hear new ideas, to hear new voices, to kind of see what's out there and what's going on and think about how your work might respond to that or even lead that. Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to embrace change in what you're doing.
Okay.
One of the elements that probably also needs to be taken on board is, as well as embracing change, one of the great strengths of our location at Lincoln is clearly in the heart of a medieval city. We acknowledge that actually there are fundamentals on which we build, and certainly there are lots of connotations and connections with the kind of foundation stepping stones for all of these kind of things, which actually are important for us to, in a sense, continue to share with our students so they have those fundamentals to actually bounce off from and develop. And I think it's that balance between the two, that symbiotic link between both past and present, that really is at the forefront, certainly of what I think all programs in the College of Arts actually really look to deliver and provide the traditional with obviously the modern and, dare I say it, the postmodern as well.
I think we're already changing. We've already changed. In fact, the very nature of what we do, it's in continual flux. I just recently, actually, still in the middle of a project about democracy. Is technology, has it hurt democracy? And what I was after was a young person's perspective on this rather than my own. And I think when we started this project 3 weeks ago, people were, students were quite down about this. Of course, I'm alluding to the Trump campaign here. And there was a watch list of what we were looking at. There was a film, The Great Hack. They were researching into Cambridge Analytica. They were reading papers about democracy by Max Rosa and concerns about democracy in the digital age. And all of a sudden, on a halfpenny, things changed, and you didn't hear about Cambridge Analytica. There was hope in America on Saturday, and the whole project. I had the class yesterday, so it was 7 days after, and the whole complexion of their of their projects were changing, and it was beautiful to see, to be quite honest with you. So the systems that they were using, their solutions, digital solutions to me, they changed within a week.
If I may just add a couple of words about it, I think that one of the most important concepts that we can use today in the design discipline has been already pointed out by Jason when he was talking about the resiliency. And in my point of view, the future of and the next changes that will happen in the society, in industry, and the reflection of those elements on the pedagogical training of students will be mostly driven by the capability of students to be resilient to present conditions, as well as also the capability of teachers to be a sort of antennas in predicting future and present conditions in order to give students the chance to be confident in dealing the actual situation. Designing for resiliency or true resiliency. There are it could be just a simple trick by words. But in my point of view, if you design for the resiliency, you will design in order to create lively conditions for future generations of people. It's like the same process that happened during 80s with the sustainability, later in 90s with the inclusion. And today we are recalling the concept introduced by Zygmunt Bauman. We are in a very fluid society. We cannot work and maintain for a long time consolidated and blind points of view about what is happening today, because the changes compared to the past time are very fast, and the more and more often in the future will be faster again. There will be more elements to consider together in a sort of jam, and then working with the resiliency will allow even future students and future creative industries to be multidisciplinary, to be delocalized instead of focused on a geographical aspect. They need to be aware that the effects of their productions or the products that they will design and sell in the market will be global, but at the same time even local, both connected with the capability of industry to be to work in a cutting-edge solution, but at the same time respective the specificities of local production plants or crafting and manufacturing capabilities of local communities. I think that in the future, probably there will be a new role for humans, not only as a passive actors in the design process, but a very active role for them in shaping and reshaping, and even in co-designing with designers and industry. What we can do is obviously, as a people that work in the university, is to be resilient and don't force the changing process of shaping in the society, because in my point of view, the change will be always using a bottom-up approach. Then people will express new needs instead of following trends and diktats driven by governments, societies, or companies. We have seen something like that with the maker movement, especially during the pandemic. An incredible number of people that have worked together, they don't know each other. What was important is achieving a global goal. So I can design something, okay, but I cannot produce it, but I can produce it. So my name is James, my name is Paul, my name is Luke, I'm French, I'm Italian, I live in a sailboat, I don't have the capability of manufacturing anything, but I can get in touch with people that can help you. So working with the fluidity and the resilience probably will force even designers to rethink their role, which probably could be less tied to the physicality of products and more oriented toward achieving goals.
How do we, sorry to butt in, how do we encourage then students across our schools to develop that resiliency, to tap into that ability to collaborate? Do we encourage collaboration within schools, within the College of Arts, to work together? And if so, how do we do that?
If I may continue my talk, I can bring my personal experience about what we are doing with the BA product design. We are inviting students to be obviously very collaborative on present issues of our society. But at the same time, we are introducing new topics to work on, like the one of social inclusion, reinforcing the relationship with local, national, and international companies, as well as giving and providing our experiences to other scholars all around the world, as well as inviting them in running lectures with our students. In terms of interdisciplinarity of our curricula, obviously the collaboration is always a plus. The human race is in some ways the result of a long-lasting collaboration and contamination between people. And I really like this sort of jam that we are. As Patti Smith was used to say, people have the power. In my point of view, yeah, we have the power to continue this sort of collaboration and this sort of refinement in a sort of autopoiesis process, that things reinforce each other and are also able to select continuing the most promising one, in a sort of big family of creative thinkers that work together in achieving the same or a bigger result.
Okay, we have, sorry to do this, folks, but we have about 10 minutes left, and we've got an important question that needs to be asked to you all. As the University of Lincoln has declared a climate emergency, how has the teaching and activities within the university adapted to support such a global challenge?
So in the School of Fine and Performing Arts, I can give you two tangible examples right now of things that are taking place to try and support efforts towards suppressing climate change. I think we've got to think locally. We've got to look at what we're all doing. We've got to look at our individual practices, and we've got to look at how we behave in the world in order to solve what's a global problem. It's that kind of nice collaboration that Emilio's talking about, that if we all sort of work together on what we can affect change on, then we're capable of something much larger than just ourselves. The Lincoln Company is our professional-facing company of students from all disciplines who make work, and we take it to places like Edinburgh Festival Fringe and to other festivals around the country when we're allowed to travel to festivals. But we work year-round to create new and original work and to upskill and create workshops for each other, and that's a student-led company and student-managed. In the last year, they've joined Staging Change, which is an initiative from theatre makers and performers professional level across the country who are committed to reducing their carbon footprint, who are committed to promoting sustainable ideals and to really considering every aspect of production in theatre, from rehearsals and travel distances all the way through to how many flyers you do or don't print. And what are you printing them on, and are those sustainable inks, and is that a recyclable flyer, and could you print less of them, and could you ask someone to take a photograph of that flyer rather than handing out an awful lot of paper? So that's one example that we're really committed to embedding sustainability in the work that we take out. The other one, literally this week, a group of students in conjunction with my colleague Dr. Anna Shear have started a kind of forum, student and staff forum, where they are meeting and sharing resources and tips for living more sustainably and for thinking about treading lightly in the world, about that footprint and how we work together on that. And they've committed now to meeting, I think, twice monthly. They're setting readings, they're setting tasks, they're setting challenges for each other. I couldn't make the first one this week because I was teaching, but I'm heading to the next one. So I'm really excited that we've got initiatives like that coming straight from our students, and the staff are supporting that to happen.
Thank you, Rachel. Clive, you're muted.
Sorry. The projects that I'm seeing coming out of digital media and media students they're expressed in a way that were not 20 years ago or 10 years ago. The students know that we are not a nation of makers. We need to be a nation probably of makers again. We lost our industrial base way back, and there within lies probably the answer. If the government can pay for furlough, then the government can actually pay to reinvigorate industry on a smaller scale. So we need to be probably a nation not just of shopkeepers, but of a nation of makers again. And when I see projects and products coming out of digital media students, they really do reflect a greener world.
Thank you, Clive. Okay, Alex, yeah.
Just to actually add to that clearly from the point of view of the importance of communicating these messages, that's the very skill set that is actually being enhanced by our students. So again, they're getting the message out there, and certainly in terms of sustainability and ensuring that we are seen as stewards of the planet rather than actually dominators of the planet. I mean, it's interesting if we look at personifying the COVID-19 virus, we could be said to be the human virus that has been invading the planet. We need to address aspects like that. We're certainly actually ensuring that the balance is actually maintained between ensuring that there's a sensitivity for people's lifestyles, approaches. This is clearly where technology has been able to help. The excellent work that Emilio has put together and the sort of sustainability projects can actually feed into that. And the very fact that we haven't, in a real sense, not had to travel X number of miles, hundreds of miles to actually come into Lincoln today to actually do this, because we've used the technology, is one way in which all of our carbon footprints have actually been reduced. A little bit of virtue signaling there to begin to end up the
Emilio,
whole
can
thing.
you add anything from the design perspective about how we become a nation of makers in a sustainable manner?
I cannot reply in just 5 minutes anyway, but yeah, I'm really happy about the mood and the cultures that students of the product design program have in terms of sustainability. I'm teaching across all levels, and every time that I do a lecture, a seminar, or a studio activity, I see many sustainable-oriented ideas from my students, from the research point of view, design point of view, and even from the cultural stimulation in terms of how can we more sustainable, how can we inspire customers to adopt sustainable behaviors or emotionally durable connections with products. For what concerns specifically the impact that sustainability has on our program, we moved, and I started this sort of new trend in my program, asking students to don't print anything, never ever, moving everything digital in order to save the environment, giving them the chance to save some money, but at the same time inspiring them to be more aware about their small action on the environment. Because we are used to think about the global emergency, macro impacts. We don't have to forget that those impacts are the result of very micro and very small actions made by individuals. So if you do your job, if you do your part in the world, then you can also inspire other people to adopt more aware ways of living. In terms of cultural approach to sustainability, I am the coordinator of a design module, which is in collaboration with the Estates Department of the University of Lincoln, and we work together in order to develop tangible products and intangible services, especially designed for the University of Lincoln urban campus, with the aim of generating a sort of scalable solutions for all university campus across the world.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have a couple of minutes left, folks. I have one last, maybe challenging question for you all. In one concise sentence, can you state why your industry is the most important based in the arts? And can it help the arts to actually save the world? Who wants to take that first? Rachel, you look like you're limbering up.
Right, okay. So, arts and cultural industries can save the world because they bring us closer together. They enable us to travel when we can't. They enable us to be more inclusive and diverse, and to understand something about each other, and help us to imagine a future that then we can work towards.
Thank you, Jason.
I say I'd keep mine short and hopefully, I was going to say pithy, but that's inviting me to be shot down immediately. Well, of course, in the beginning was the word. Communication, the ability to articulate our thoughts and communicate them with others will always be fundamentally important. I never want to make the claim that the arts, the industries I'm involved with are the most important, but they're a fundamental supplement to everything that we engage with.
Thank you very much. Clive, I think you're muted, Clive.
Hi, I would argue that we've already saved the world in one sense. What happens if what would have happened if COVID had happened in year 2000? Wi-Fi protocol was only in existence for 2 years commercially since 1999. Handheld devices, 1997 with the first proper mobile phone, 2010 with the iPad. I would argue that probably COVID's picked actually the technology and the creativity, because it's actually the creativity that's enabled the world to join together to actually continue on. Otherwise, we'd have limbered on into another world 20 years ago.
Thank you very much. Alex and Emilio, between you.
I just add to what's already been said by saying that, well, firstly, it's always difficult to actually say that our industry is most important, because clearly we're about communications and so on and so forth and public relations. But maybe it's also because it helps us cope with ego, and the challenges of ego can often be as difficult to overcome in many ways as they can be assets to the whole process. So it's a case of with balance and a focus on how the system is developing, we can provide an understanding, and understanding leads to hopefully a better planet.
Thank you. Emilio.
Obviously, from a romantic point of view, I should say yes, design and creative industries can save the world, because we have the capability to think, and helping people in designing and making future living conditions for our planet. However, I would also say that we cannot do it alone. What we can do is adopting creative process for collaborating, and letting people, giving people the capability to understand how they can collaborate. This is a design-oriented activity. This is a creative-led process that we can make in practice. We can collaborate from the communicative point of view, artistic point of view, rhetorical point of view. We need communicators in order to share the shapes made by designers in a very effective way, as well as we need the communicators, the data provided by them, in order to understand what people really need in the future and how we can be really useful for them. Just to sum up, yes, the creative industry sector obviously can save the world, but at the same time, I think we can also be careful in our will to save the world, in order to don't be too much redundant with our activity. Because, when you have a lot of good ideas, there could be the chance in failing with your aim, because your will to do something of positive could be perceived like a very negative aspect, and your positive mood could be also perceived very impactful in the environment where you live.
Thank you ever so much. Well, sadly, folks, we've come to the end of our discussion here. I hope everyone has enjoyed the insights from our amazing panel here. I'd like to thank everyone for joining in today. For those who are watching, if you do have any further questions, any other questions, whether they're program specific, school specific, the university is running a Unibuddy system at the minute where you can type in questions, and there are ambassadors, students, staff from each of those schools, each of those amazing places across the College of the Arts, who hopefully can answer those questions for you. But thank you for joining in today, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.